This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Welcome. This is an extraordinary meeting of the Fire Committee. Under section 1.7 of the Authority's Standing Orders, I confirm that this meeting be called as a matter of urgency to hold a confirmation hearing for the Mayor's proposed appointee to the Office of London Fire Commissioner at the earliest opportunity, in accordance with section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. Can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Fire Committee? Our main item of business today is to hold a confirmation hearing for the proposed appointment of Jonathan Smith to the Office of London Fire Commissioner. Welcome to you, Jonathan, and thank you for joining us today. Please can I ask everyone to make sure your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any unnecessary interruptions this afternoon. Can I now ask our clerk, Diane Richards, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Assemblymember Clark, for whom Assemblymember Desai is substituting, and also apologies have been received from Assemblymember Cooper today.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 3 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Thank you. Can I also invite Jonathan Smith to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to the proposed appointment?
No items to declare, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we begin with the confirmation hearing question, I do want to take a moment to offer our condolences to the families, friends and colleagues of the 2 firefighters who lost their lives in the major fire in Oxfordshire last week. One of the firefighters, Sub-Officer Martin Sadler, was a London Fire Brigade member, and we're very sorry for this loss. I don't know, Jonathan, if you want to make a few comments.
No, thank you for that, Chair. And I was down in Oxfordshire yesterday for the minute silence that was held as colleagues from across the country came down to pay tribute to the 2 firefighters who were killed and the member of the public. It is a stark reminder of what we ask brave firefighters to do on a daily basis, and a reminder certainly to me personally in my current role and hopefully future role around the enormous responsibility that sits on my shoulders as the proposed next Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade, and with the support of this committee, that we do everything to keep our firefighters, control staff and everyone who works for the London Fire Brigade as safe as they possibly can in what is a very challenging risk environment at the moment. Our heartfelt sympathies go to the friends, family and colleagues of everybody who lost their lives. And thank you, Chair, for your opening comments.
Thank you. I imagine the whole committee would want to support your comments. That brings us to item 4, the confirmation hearing in respect of the appointment of the London Fire Commissioner. The committee will be putting questions to Jonathan in relation to his proposed appointment. However, can I first ask members to note the letters from me as chair to the Mayor and the candidate confirming notice of a confirmation hearing? Thank you. And note the information received from the Mayor and from the proposed appointee to the Office of London Fire Commissioner following the committee's request. Thank you. We'll now move on to the Q&A session. Jonathan, could I ask you, what specific strengths and capabilities, both professional and personal, do you believe uniquely position you to lead LFB at this critical time?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't think there is such a thing as an audition for the role of Commissioner, but over the course of the last 2.5 years as the current Commissioner's statutory DEP with responsibility for our operational performance, I've probably come as close as you can to gaining the necessary experience and understanding around what the role actually entails. And prior to that, I've held every Assistant Commissioner position within the operational side of the organisation. And since I joined the London Fire Brigade in 2019, moving the organisation forward, whether it's in terms of our operational response, in particular reference to the Grenfell recommendations, covering all elements of our operational response, from the moment that the call comes into the control room to when our firefighters are mobilised to how we command an incident in often very difficult and challenging circumstances. I think the last 5 years in particular have been transformative in terms of where we've come from as an organisation, both in terms of our operational competence and capabilities, which has received external validation through the HMIC FRS report that we recently received at the end of last year, which actually gives us that external rigour and scrutiny and a sense that we are actually on the right direction in terms of moving the organisation forward. Now, in terms of my role within all of that, as I've discussed, it's been to overhaul our operational policy procedures and how we operate in what is an extraordinarily challenging risk environment at the moment, and we have made significant progress to get us into that position. In terms of the culture of the organisation, I've been the senior responsible owner for our culture transformation programme, which was a significant piece of work that was kicked off following the publication of the culture review, of which this committee will be very familiar. Still an awful lot of more work for us to do, but we were in, just to reflect where we were at the end of last year, we were in engage measures, so the equivalent of special measures for the Fire and Rescue Service. We were anticipating the next visit from the HMI, and we needed to know that we were going to be in a very strong position to significantly improve previous reports. We knew that we were going to receive the Grenfell Phase 2 report, and we were going to need to respond and react to that. Now, I'm pleased to say across all three of those, we have made significant progress, and this has been a huge team effort. I think it's very important that I stress that. You know, the teams that I've had the privilege to lead have delivered for this organisation. But I suppose where I would sort of draw this answer to a conclusion is that the way I would couch it is that we're at the end of the beginning at the moment, if I can put it that way. Over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, we have needed to address some fundamental issues within the structure of the organisation, our operational competence, and indeed the culture of the London Fire Brigade. Now, there's still huge progress. Well, there has been huge progress that has been made, but there is still an awful lot more for us to do. The reason I'm confident as the candidate being proposed by the Mayor to take the organisation forward is because I know this organisation, I know the work that's still required to get us to a position where we are regarded as the best fire and rescue service in the UK. And that's directly quoting from the lead HMI. The last time I was in front of this committee was with Lee Freeman, who quite rightly pointed out that the London Fire Brigade should be the best fire and rescue service in the United Kingdom, if not in Europe. And I think that, for me, is the exciting prospect that we've got in front of us, that the fundamentals and the foundations of the organisation we've needed to correct over the course of the last 5 years. And we've been as open as transparent with this committee and others who scrutinise our performance. And we know that we haven't always got everything right. I think the key thing now is that we've learnt our lessons. We know the direction of travel the organisation needs to move in. And I'm very, very confident that I can bring the workforce with me under the scrutiny that we're under, quite rightly provided by this committee, but also through our internal audit committee, the Culture Advisory Board, and indeed the general scrutiny that comes from the Mayor and his team. You know, we are the most scrutinised fire and rescue service in the country, and that's a good thing. You know, we operate in a highly complex risk environment. We've had to travel a significant distance over many years, particularly the last 5 years under Andy's leadership. And I would just, if the committee will bear with me, I would just like to pay tribute actually to the current Commissioner and outgoing Commissioner, because I think history will judge him very kindly in terms of the progress that we've made as an organisation underneath his leadership. He's arguably been the most consequential Chief Fire Officer for a generation. We simply wouldn't be having the conversations about culture that are not just within the London Fire Brigade but nationally within a sector without Andy's brave leadership, and it's been a privilege to be his statutory dep over the course of the last 2.5 years and part of his senior team since 2019, and he can go with the knowledge that he leaves the London Fire Brigade in a much better position than when he inherited it. In terms of my own sort of personal leadership style, I think the thing I've always prided myself on is being around to build high-performing teams. You know, I like to think that I empower those who work for me, that they have a sense of direction and mission in terms of what we need to achieve, but also that they have the ability to come forward with ideas that I wouldn't necessarily consider, because I've never been in a position where I think I know it all, because I certainly don't. And we need to have a diversity of opinion and thought. We need to think outside of the box, because the risk environment that we're in now is more nuanced and challenging than it's ever been before. When I joined the fire service, yes, it was always difficult and dangerous work, but our role was actually quite straightforward and we understood what we needed to do. We operate now in an environment where, whether it's the challenges from climate change, whether it's international or domestic terrorism, whether it's aggressive state actors, whether it's the challenge of the built environment, all of these things make actually the role of firefighting now more complicated than it's ever been. And I think building genuine high-performing teams to coalesce around the mission of the organisation is always something that I've prided myself on being able to do. And the prospect of being able to do that as the London Fire Commissioner is something that I would absolutely relish and look forward to being able to take that forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive answer. We're going to come on to transparency later on, I believe, but just noting it. And also, I believe the whole committee enjoyed working with Andy for the last few years too, so would amplify your comments. There was some bold ambitions there. So what would your key aims and priorities be for delivering an excellent fire service?
Well, first and foremost, we do have to invest more in our operational training and competence. I think to bridge the gap that exists between the complex risk environment that we operate in and what we expect firefighters and control officers to deal with on a daily basis requires even more ambition around our training offer. And we've made significant progress there. If you look at our marauding terrorist attack capability now, is the most comprehensive in the whole of the United Kingdom, as it should be, given the risk profile that London has. The tactical ventilation course that our firefighters are now going through down at the Fire Service College, where they're going through real fire training, and I've had the privilege of going down there myself to see it in action, actually is building a bedrock from which we can build. But as I was discussing before, in terms of the nature of risk we now face, in order to make sure that our firefighters have got the best kit, equipment, training, policy, procedures to deal with what is an ever-growing and complex risk environment, that requires that investment in training. Now, in order to do that, we will have to look at our overarching spend. We'll need to make sure we're prioritising that in the right way. So a key priority moving forward is to make sure we're running a balanced budget. It is to make sure that we're addressing the budgetary challenges that all public sector organisations are managing at the moment, and everybody within the GLA will be acutely aware of that, and we're not immune for it. What I will be doing is making the case that the London operating environment for a fire and rescue service is unique. We are a genuinely global city by every metric. You know, our comparisons actually are not Manchester, they're not Edinburgh, they're not Newcastle, they're New York, they're Tokyo, they're Paris. And if you look at our overarching footprint in terms of numbers of firefighters, in terms of fire stations, you know, we're actually reasonably modest. Now, I understand the financial environment that we're operating in, and I'm not saying we would necessarily require more resource, but we certainly do not need less. And my firm recommendation to the Mayor and to the broader GLA is that we need to make sure we are protecting and prioritising our operational frontline response. That means maintaining the same level of firefighters that we've currently got. It means keeping the fire stations that we've currently got. It means investing in our control and command functions. It means making sure that operational training is of the standard that we would expect for a genuine global city with all of the challenges that that brings. So those will be critical priorities. Underneath all of that, though, is the culture of the organisation, because they're two sides of the same coin. You don't get to become the best fire and rescue service in the country unless you've got the right culture, that commitment culture to the mission, to serve and protect London has to run through everything that we do. Everybody has to feel safe and secure when they come to work, not just in terms of what we expect them to do on the incident ground, but when they're back at the fire station or whether they're in our command and control function or whatever professional department they are in. If they do not feel safe and secure in their workplace, then we've still got an awful lot more work to do, and we have. So the continuing drive for cultural improvement will have to be there as well, on top of the operational improvements I want to see. But there are some really big, exciting projects on the horizon. A new headquarters building, looking at making sure we get that right, looking at new PPE, looking at new workwear provision that actually is fit for a fire and rescue service in the 21st century. These are bold and ambitious ideas and proposals moving forward, but I think because of the work that we've done over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, that has got us into this position where we're now able to take the next step. And there is an important juncture as a new commissioner comes online that this is the opportunity now to take us forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Bokhari.
I just want to first say that when I first met you, it was an East London mosque.
I remember.
You were grinning from ear to ear because of the amazing work that Donna had done in Muslim engagement. So back then I thought, he's the one to watch. And then here we are in this chamber where I actually predicted it would happen. So what a surprise that you're here.
That's very generous.
But I want to focus on your leadership style, and you've said in your covering statement that the new commissioner needs to be dynamic, people-focused, and have a leadership style to deliver the cultural and systematic change that is still required. How are you different from your predecessor in style of leadership?
Well, I think the thing that Andy and I we were in complete sync in terms of what we needed to do for the organisation. But I'm not Andy Rowe. We're very different characters. We operate in different ways, which is why actually the relationship that we've had has been critical to how we take the organisation forward. But the one thing that has always remained consistent is the mission in terms of what we felt we needed to do to deliver the changes that were required within the London Fire Brigade. I'm very much a team player. I very much see the strength in the team. I've worked with the current directors for a number of years now, and the new additions that have come into the team have bonded very well. So I'm very confident that working with them, we're going to be able to take a collaborative team approach to driving the organisation forward. And the circumstances I think that we find ourselves in now require a different style of leadership moving forward. When I think of the situation we found ourselves when Andy took over in January 2020, is very different to the circumstances, if I'm successful at this panel, that we find ourselves now, and that requires a different style of leadership. It means we do have to be collaborative. It means we have to bring all of the ideas that exist within the organisation. One of the things I'm really keen to do, and every time I go out on a fire station or go to control or talk to members of our professional departments, the capability and drive that exists within the organisation is there. It's about freeing that up. And sometimes this is going to sound like a peculiar thing to say, that means getting the organisation out of the way to enable ideas to come through, to make sure that where we can make improvements, we're able to do it in a much more agile way. And I think my particular style lends itself to enabling people to feel safe to come forward. It will always mean, ultimately, as the Fire Commissioner, I have to take the decision. I will be held to account for those decisions, and that's right and proper. But I think having the broadest range of ideas and views in terms of how we take the organisation forward, how we deal with the risks that we now face that we didn't face even 5, 10, 15 years ago, I think I'm best placed to do that, and I hope those I've had direct responsibility for managing will acknowledge that they've been able to flourish in their careers, and the 3 assistant commissioners.
You have had a different, in terms of your career, steps towards this position compared to your predecessor.
Indeed.
In some ways, yes, I'm glad that you're saying that you're going to be a team player. I think that's needed. In the way that we need to go forward, and I'm intrigued by the fact that you are saying you are going to be a different leader, because I think there are some people within the London Fire Brigade that actually do want something different now. So would you say that you're not more of the same, you are different, how are you going to make that difference really apparent to people who want to see that change? Are you, for example, going to have the same staff, advisors, PR team, comms, press team around you? Are you going to see some changes there?
Well, I will consider what I think I require in terms of the London Fire Commissioner, in terms of that immediate structure that sits around me to provide, because it is different. You know, I'm the corporation sole. There is an enormous responsibility that sits on the London Fire Commissioner. But what I also know is that I have a fantastic team of directors that sit underneath me who actually provide us with different perspectives, different views about how we take the organisation forward. And as you quite rightly point out, my career trajectory has been different. I've operated in other fire and rescue services. I've operated within what was the Chief Fire Officers Association and now the National Fire Chiefs Council. So I understand the pressures that other services, particularly our home counties services, are under, and that brings a different perspective. And I just think, as I was saying before, I think the circumstances that we find ourselves in now are different to the circumstances that Andy found himself dealing with, and I'm of absolutely no doubt whatsoever, and I don't think this committee is, or anyone who's looked at the trajectory of travel of the London Fire Brigade, that Andy was the right man for the job to take the organisation forward.
I look forward to seeing those changes that you're committing to. And just before we move on to the next question, I do want to get a commitment from you as well, because this is our chance to get commitments from you to make sure that you do go on to the next stage of getting this job. And one of those things is that one of the commitments I want to ask you now is something that I asked the Mayor yesterday. You and I have talked about lithium-ion batteries before. Do you remember that?
I do.
The public awareness campaign that I asked for, Charge Safe, then became a campaign that you did.
Indeed.
My next ask is this. We need to make sure that the public awareness is throughout the TfL adverts that are going out on the banning of the e-bikes and e-scooters that are now going across TfL. But people are still not aware of the reasons why you're banning them. And I've asked the Mayor to make sure there's a QR code on every poster that connects to the Charge Safe campaign. I got a bit of a wishy-washy answer from the Mayor. I want a commitment from you.
Well, I think my commitment in terms of the advertising campaign, which I think is critical, is absolutely there, Assembly Member Bakari. I think the more we can do as far as public education is concerned, the better, for the reasons that you've clearly highlighted. Now, if a QR code or the use of modern technology is the best way for us to try and achieve that, then absolutely we would have a look at it and see if we can take that forward. But so I'm really, no idea is off the table in terms of what we can do to increase awareness around whether it's e-bikes or e-scooters or the challenges that come with new and emerging technology. However best we can meet our audience to get those messages across, I'm absolutely up for. Now, how we do it
Charlie Pugsley thinks it's a good idea,
discussion.
so I want you to back it and let's make history again.
To be honest, if Charlie Pugsley thinks it's a good idea, then I'm all in. So I think nothing's off the table. We will look to whatever we can do to take it forward.
If in doubt, blame Charlie. Assemblymember Tyrrell.
I always do.
I'm joking. Sorry, Assemblymember Tyrrell.
Thank you, Chair. And great to have you before us today, Jonathan. Could you quickly tell us what you anticipate the top 3 challenges for the London Fire Commissioner and your plan to address them?
So I think the top 3 challenges are linked to what I've discussed before. I think the biggest one is the evolving nature of risk, and making sure that we keep pace with the evolving nature of risk, which I think is a challenge for any emergency service, but particularly an emergency service operating within the London context. Clearly, we've got to make sure that we're managing our budget in the most efficient and effective way, and that commitment has to continue to make sure that that sets us up for the future. And then the third issue that I think, and I'm sure we will come to this, is how we continue to support the regulation of the built environment, which is the challenge of a generation, as we found from Grenfell and what's unfolded since then, making sure that we're working with the GLA, with the central government and with other interested parties to make the built environment as safe as it possibly can be. Those are the top 3 priorities for me moving forward.
Thank you, Assemblymember Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me. So the Fire Brigade has gone through a period of significant change and transformation since the tragedy of the Grenfell Tower. How do you propose to continue this process of transformation?
Well, I think one of the biggest learnings that we took from Grenfell Tower in particular, but also a number of other significant incidents that have arisen, is that we need to be constantly learning. that actually, because, and again, linked to the answer to the question before, I think the nature of what we're confronted with on a daily basis continues to evolve and change. It means the London Fire Brigade has to move away from where I think we were many years ago, that we were quite arrogant, that we didn't look outwards, we didn't take advice and guidance from other fire and rescue services. If you look at something like wildfire, and the events of 20...
Got a question coming up on that.
Yeah, right, okay. Sorry, well, I won't go into too much, but I think it's an important example, because if you look at the issues that we faced in 2022, we'd always been an organisation that was comfortable operating in a particularly urban environment. What we didn't have was the wildfire expertise, and then the events of 2022 occurred. So if you look at all of our wildfire provision now, whether it's the new wildfire vehicles that we've currently got operating, whether it's the training that firefighters have received, all of that came from other fire and rescue services who have got significant experience in this space. Now, I'm not sure that would have happened 10 years ago, because we would not have been as outwardly facing as we currently are, and taking actually the best from the rest of the country to make sure that that's helping us shape what we do. That was one of the key lessons from Grenfell, is that we have to be on this relentless journey of continuous improvement. That actually the world as it's evolving, the challenges around risk, means that we have to constantly keep coming back to ourselves to make sure that we're content and confident that our resources are in the right place, that our firefighters are receiving the right training, that control has the resource it needs to do what it needs to do. Because otherwise the world passes you by and you don't keep pace. And we simply cannot be in that space. How do we use new and emerging technology? What does AI mean for the London Fire Brigade? What does quantum computing mean? You know, all of these questions we have to be asking ourselves, so that I can give this committee and the Mayor and most importantly Londoners the assurance that they have got a world-class 21st century fire and rescue service. So it's this constant coming back time and time again to sense check where we are. As I was saying before in my opening remarks, we are quite rightly the most scrutinised fire and rescue service in the UK. I think the introduction, or the reintroduction I should say, of the HMI as a regulating body on fire and rescue services, without doubt helped the London Fire Brigade move at pace over the course of the last 5 years. We want to see that scrutiny continue. We welcome it. Sometimes that can make difficult reading, but I think the outcome is that we're a better service for it, and long may that continue.
Thank you.
Thanks. Assemblymember Bukhari.
Thank you. We're moving on to culture, which is my big topic, obviously, as you know. It's been a recurring theme, and something that I again asked the Mayor about yesterday. And then, as I was speaking, a news report came out about a female member of staff who had been saying that she'd been secretly recorded in the bathrooms by male firefighters who were boasting about having rape kits. And then, apparently, she's been trying to have a case that was apparently thrown out by the London Fire Brigade, according to this newspaper article. However, I know it's a legal case. We're not going into that. Well, what I do want to say to you is that there is obviously still an issue about institutional misogyny, racism and homophobia within the LFB. And there is still an issue about making sure that the complaints procedure is fit for purpose. Would you not agree?
I do agree. Yeah, I don't think any of us would be at any point say that we've fixed the culture of the London Fire Brigade, and I don't think you ever do. You know, it's not a fixed, it's not a linear process, it's not a fixed point. We have to be continuously relentless about how we drive out behaviours that don't represent the values of the organisation. What I would say is that certainly over the course of the last 3 to 4 years in particular, we've made significant progress. I mean, just in terms of understanding where the line in the sand is, what the values of the organisation are, that there are significant consequences for behaviours like the ones that you've just outlined, Assemblymember Bukhari, that we are in a much stronger position now to deal with those when they present themselves. But it's a relentless piece of work. You know, this is not something that's start and finish. We have to continually drive forward why the London Fire Brigade has values that actually are not just nice words that make nice posters that sit on a wall. They actually go to the core of what we are as an organisation. And if you do not subscribe to those values, if you do not behave in a professional way that respects everybody in the workplace, then you have no business being in the organisation, and I will be relentless in that pursuit. But of course, we employ nearly 6,000 members of staff. Human beings come with their strengths and their weaknesses. It can be very complex, and this is an ongoing ongoing piece of work, but you have my absolute commitment that if I was to be approved here as the next London Fire Commissioner, that commitment is real, and we will continue to drive the cultural changes that have been recognised over the last few years.
Right now, though, are you 100% confident that anyone that's accused of misogyny, racism, homophobia or any other misconduct is going to be held to account and even dismissed if found guilty, even yourself?
Well, I am, because the processes that we've now got in place mean that everybody has confidence to be able to come forward. If there are acts and behaviours that are committed that are outside of our values, there is a very clear path to making sure that those who commit those acts are held to the highest account. Now, it needs to go through proper process. We know that there's still challenges around the Professional Standards Unit and making sure that that's got the support and resource that it requires, and I wouldn't shy away from that. We know that we need to be continually looking at our structures to make sure that people do have that faith and confidence in bringing forward complaints where issues present themselves. But a lot of these cases are, as you'll be acutely aware, they're very, very complicated. They require a lot of endeavour to make sure that we get to the right outcome. But what we now have is a permanent director of our People Services function. We now have a permanent leader for our Professional Standards Unit. We've increased the numbers of staff in the PSU now from 11 to 14. We'll continue to look at that to make sure that those structures exist, because I completely agree with you. People need to have faith and confidence in the systems and structures that we've got in place. And it's still a relatively new unit. You know, it's 16 months in its endeavour. We know there will be lessons to be learned. We know that mistakes will have been made. But can I sit here and say with confidence that where behaviour presents itself and we know about it and people have the confidence to come forward to report it, it will be dealt with. You've only got to look at the sheer scale and numbers of cases that we've been dealing with over the last sort of 2 to 3 years.
Have you got numbers of people that have been dismissed for homophobia, racism and misogyny?
Well, there are always, as you're aware, Assembly Member Bakari, there are always challenges in terms of what I'm able to say in a public forum in terms of the numbers. And we've discussed before about fire and rescue becoming a regulated industry, so that I can be as candid as I possibly can. What I can say is that I will always be as transparent as I can be in terms of the numbers and the reasons why people have left the organisation, and that will continue.
Well, we'll be pushing for that, because we don't want to have to do another FOI now, do I?
I understand.
I do want to also just press on the fact that, you know, I'm still concerned about the independence of the PSU, and we have written a report for you which raises those concerns, and we'll continue to push you on this. I'm also concerned that the Mayor doesn't have a full and adequate understanding, because, again, when I was asking questions yesterday, I don't think he has an understanding of really some of the issues that we have in terms of the continual problems with the PSU in terms of becoming fully independent and the challenges that it has. So I'm going to push you on this, but also want another commitment. And this time I'm going to ask you whether you would be willing, since the fact that Nazir Afzal's report was written in November 2022, would you be willing to commit to having a 5-year follow-up from the review of Nazir Afzal's report in 2027?
Well, I think my answer to that, Assembly Member Bakari, is that we've obviously received the committee's report that you have helped shape and the 10 recommendations that have come from that. And we're in the process at the moment of shaping our response to that, which will be with you by the deadline of the 4th of June. And what I'm pleased to say within that report, it obviously acknowledges the progress that we've made as an organisation, but it also points out areas where we know there's still improvements to be made, and I wouldn't shy away from that. So I think we need to respond in full to that report and to give it the due consideration and respect that it deserves. And then in terms of what we do moving forward, I think that will emerge from our response to that report, Assembly Member Bakari. So I think there's areas that we need to have a real good think about in terms of how we can take the organisation forward. As I said before, I am completely open to new and emerging ideas about how we do that, but we will need to consider those in due course and make sure that we get it right. We are already heavily independently scrutinised as an organisation, but as I've said before, I welcome that, and if there are other options...
But the way Nazir Afzal did that investigation was different, wasn't it? It was really thorough, and that's what I'm asking for you to do. Another thorough overview that firefighters who feel like they can't speak up can have a voice and be heard.
Well, I think once we've considered the Assembly's report and come back with how we think we're going to be able to respond to that, including what we'll do against those set recommendations, I think there's then a discussion to be had about how we take the organisation forward, because, of course, the organisation now is in a very different position to where we were when Nazir Afzal's report landed, and I think we will have to reflect that in terms of what we do moving forward. But my complete commitment to learn lessons and continuously drive cultural improvement is there. How we do that, I think, is open for a discussion, and I welcome the expertise that sits at this committee and elsewhere to help us get to that destination.
Okay, just one last point before the next question. In a letter of apology to Jayden's family, Andy said that he was going to put up a plaque in his memory at the HQ, hold an annual lecture, an annual legacy fund, and an annual organisational update. Have those commitments been held?
So they are being done as we speak. So Jayden's plaque and picture is up at Brigade headquarters. I walk past it every day as I go into work. All of the other elements that you've referenced, those options are now being considered and worked through, and we will do that with Jayden's family to make sure that we get that right. But the commitments that we've made to Jayden's family and friends and work colleagues and everybody within the London Fire Brigade and more broadly are very, very real. I take them very, very personally. I've met with Jayden's family. I take those obligations very, very seriously, and we will move that forward in the right way.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Assemblymember Desai. Pop your mic on, sorry.
Before I ask my question, can I just draw your attention, if I may, to the guidance note that we were given for this hearing, particular paras 3.1 and 3.2, as to the scope of our questioning, which is about the fitness and ability to do the job.
Noted, thank you.
And I think we should stick to those parameters.
Yeah, and I think it does fit that, because we're supposed to be making sure that the Commissioner is independent, impartial, and that is what we're looking at right now to make sure that that is the role that he'll be fitting within.
Also noted, thank you.
Yeah, well, I've got no interpretation of 3.1 and 3.2, but I'll ask you my question, which is, the committee has looked at the fire brigade's responsibilities with the emerging risks around wildfires and building safety recently. How will you ensure the fire brigade is sufficiently flexible and agile to enable it to respond quickly and effectively to these and other emerging fire risks?
Well, if I'm honest, I think that question goes to the core of the challenge that we're wrestling with as an emergency service, that we do, and the clues in the question actually in terms of agility. That what we have to be able to do is, where new and emerging risks arise, where we're looking in the future, that's also very, very important, that we can try and predict as best we possibly can, and that means international learning as well as national learning around the challenges that we expect a modern fire and rescue service to face in a 21st century global city. The two examples you give around wildfire and building safety, if I start with wildfire, we knew that when the events of 2022 occurred, we were not prepared for an incident of that type. We'd never seen before firefighters having to operate in 40-degree heat. That's genuinely unprecedented, certainly for the London Fire Brigade. 15 significant major incidents spread right across the geography of the capital is something that we've just not seen before. So we reached out to national and international learning to make sure we've now got a wildfire capability and provision that matches that risk. Now, we had to move at real pace. We had to roll out training as quickly as we possibly could. We drew down from the National Fire Chiefs Council a lot of the wildfare provision that existed there. And we've been able to move that at pace, and that means working very closely with key stakeholders like the Fire Brigades Union, who understand the challenge that we face at the moment. And that crucial relationship with the workforce and with the rep bodies in particular is how we need to continue to develop and improve, because we will need to move at an agile pace in a way we probably didn't need to 10, 15, 20 years ago. In terms of the built environment, as I was mentioning before in my previous answer, I think us assisting national government, the GLA, London boroughs more broadly to help regulate the built environment in a way that genuinely matches the risk that we face is going to be something we're going to have a relentless focus. And it will mean thinking quite innovatively in terms of how we do it. We've got 65 to 70% of the building stock that comes under the jurisdiction of the building safety regulator within London. Our operating environment is very, very different. So we will have to take a risk-based, triaged approach in order to make sure that our resources are concentrated on the areas of most risk. And that will mean working flexibly. It will mean doing things differently. I'm very confident now that we know that as an organisation. We've proven our ability to move at pace where we need to, and that is something we're going to have to continue to see as we move forward.
Chair, not relevant to this questions session, but I did have questions of the Mayor yesterday at Mayor's question time, so you may wish to look at the transcript and see what the questions were and his answers.
I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to Assembly Member Bukhari.
Sorry about the ping pong. So this won't be too long. We faced some challenges with transparency and openness with commitments in the last committee, and you actually apologised at the end when I raised that issue. I'd like a commitment from you that you will be able to engage positively with the committee and provide us with information that we need to deliver our effective scrutiny. And also there was a recommendation with our last report about making sure that there is regular and open, transparent staff surveys as well. So a whole question about transparency moving forward.
Well, the short answer to that is absolutely yes. You know, I'm very, very keen that we are as transparent as we possibly can be, both with this committee and more broadly. We've always tried to be that, the truth be told. I think that certainly over the course of the last 5 years, we've tried to be as open and as transparent and share information as quickly as possible. Now, sometimes our internal systems haven't always enabled us to do that at the pace that's been required, and hence the reason that I apologise before. But there's no lack of intent of that, I can assure you. That where we're able to, we will make sure that we share information, we share the requests of this committee and others, because the way we help move the organisation forward is to be genuinely transparent. You know, I'm completely open that we will not always get things right. We certainly won't. But we will learn where we make mistakes, and then we will improve and continue that process. And transparency is critical to that. Your point around surveys, absolutely. You know, we've been pushing forward with staff surveys. We've seen a gradual progression in terms of positive outcomes from those surveys. That will continue. They will also be mapped with pulse surveys at certain points during the year, just to sense check what we're doing as an organisation, because they're a critical piece of data for us to drive improvement moving forward. So you have my complete commitment on that.
Well, we haven't had written confirmation yet from the recommendation, so it'd be good to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to echo, you've mentioned several times today the importance of scrutiny, and obviously transparency is the first step that we need to scrutinise the committee. So hopefully, yeah, there'll be improvement in the relationship, further improvement. The CRMP Community Risk Management Plan 2023 to 2029 was a big process around local consultation and stakeholders. How will you prioritise further community engagement as Commissioner?
Well, it's critical, and interestingly, part of the process to be sat in front of you today was to sit in front of our community forum, and who asked us that very question, in terms of how do we make sure that the services that we deliver actually match the needs and wants of local communities throughout London. And I've said in this committee before, the wonderful thing about London is effectively we've got 33 towns that are all next to each other, all of which have got their own diverse needs. You know, the challenges you face in Barnet are very different to what you'd face in Sutton, which is different to what you'd face in Tower Hamlets. So one of the things that I pushed for when I was the Assistant Commissioner for Fire Stations were borough risk management plans that take that real local look at what is required at that very local level. And that's something we need to continue. You know, again, going back to the lessons from Grenfell, where I think one of the quite right criticisms that were levelled against the London Fire Brigade is that we had taken a step back from community engagement when actually we needed to take a forward step into those communities. And I think if you look at a number of incidents over recent years, whether it was New Providence Wharf, whether it was the issues we faced at Wembley, and actually most recently in Dagenham, we've taken the polar opposite approach, that we've stepped into communities, we've been there to listen to their needs, and that will be something that we need to be relentless about going forward, because if we're not relevant to the needs of London's communities, then actually we're failing as an organisation, and that is an absolute commitment, that taking that localised approach to listen to the needs of local communities is something we will continue to embed in all of our plans. And yes, the CRMP sits as our overarching strategy, but that's actually delivered through those borough risk management plans and those station delivery plans, so that our interface, whether it's a firefighter or whether it's a control officer or whether it's someone carrying out a building safety inspection, is got the community as their focus in terms of what we're there to do. And I think the plans are now in place to enable us to do that, but we have to be continuously relentless, and that's why the community forum is so important to us. And we've seen improvements in YouGov polling, in terms of Londoners feeling that the London Fire Brigade is there for them, that they do trust us to serve and protect them, and that will need to continue. We'll need to keep sense-checking ourselves that the services that we are delivering are rooted in the needs of local communities, but that will absolutely be a commitment moving forward.
That all sounds really positive. A conversation I've had with Commissioner Rowe over the years was around also a forum or a group of people who have experienced fire or experienced the trauma of it. But crucially, paying people for their time and energy because they've gone through this experience and then they're committing back. Commissioner Rowe said that we needed to be careful we weren't paying people to hear what we want them to hear, which I think is a fair caution about that. If you are appointed as Commissioner, do you have a kind of a take on that in terms of how that could move forward?
Well, I think one of the things, having sat in front of the community forum on numerous occasions now, it's how can we expand that? It's how can we invest in that further still? Because I think we've got Grenfell survivors there, you've got representatives from key community groups spread right across London. And what I would like to do is build on that further still. How can we improve it? What does that look like? But that needs to be driven by communities themselves. You know, I think, again, one of the areas we've fallen foul in the past is we've taken quite a parental approach to community engagement, that we say that actually we're the experts, we think we know what we're doing, but actually not listening to the right, or not asking the right questions and not listening to the answers that come back. That is absolutely something we have to make sure we continue to drive improvement. So I think looking at the structures we've currently got, whether it's the community forum or what we're doing at a local level through borough risk management plans, will be a continuing drive. But as I said before, I'm open to look at all options about how we can improve the organisation going forward and making decisions accordingly.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. We've been talking about transparency, and to be transparent, I've made it clear to this committee and indeed the Mayor, when I heard Andy was leaving, that I sincerely hoped that you'd put in and you would get the job. And that's based on years of watching you and listening to you, answering questions to us and how you deal with the staff. My question is around, have you considered the best way to address budgetary challenges? Of course you have. You mentioned them to Assembly Member Turrell, as in it's one of your three things. It's not something you can answer now because that will be a long discussion, I imagine, because making difficult choices is just that. So we'll have to discuss that at length. The only thing I will comment is you have been in many meetings with me. You have heard me constantly say that when people are under a process, which we know they have got to be, I will push you as much as Andy, they have got to go through those processes in a timely way, because it's not just members of our staff, it's their families and their colleagues that are suffering. And you said right at the beginning when you addressed the first question that we must look at the frontline service and officers, and we have got to look after them in that respect. So I hope that will be addressed. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't know if you wanted to comment at all.
Well, I thank you, Assembly Member Hall, for those comments. And yes, my commitment back is that we know that we've needed to move things quicker than they've happened. I think the circumstances we found ourselves in post-culture review meant we had to look at all of our structures. That's taken time. You're right to highlight that there are individuals and families involved in these processes. We need to continue to improve that, and you will absolutely continue to hold me to account to make sure we're delivering on it, and I completely understand and respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the building safety regime, which obviously you've touched on a couple of times. We've had several committee meetings where we've talked about the skill shortages, the problem with remediation, the fact it's going to take time. I know it's a very general question for a very broad subject, but what focus will you bring to this, and what would you say are the immediate steps you can take to release some of these pressures?
So I think part of the answer that I gave to Assembly Member Turrell earlier on was around the priorities, and managing the built environment is absolutely a key priority. So that means we will need to make sure that's resourced properly. If I look at our department that oversees our protection activity, you're quite right, they are under pressure because of the scale and challenge that London Fire Brigade faces that is just not matched in the rest of the country. I will be lobbying hard, central government and the GLA more broadly and the Mayor, that the provision we require is different to the rest of the country. That, to answer one of the other questions I was talking about before, is that 70% of the building stock that sits within the building safety regulator sits within the M25. So that puts an enormous pressure on our internal departments to make sure that we're able to help manage that environment. We're going to have to work collaboratively, We're going to have to work with central government, we're going to have to work with the GLA, we're going to have to work with London boroughs, and we're going to have to prioritise, and we're going to have to take a risk-based approach to it. We're going to have a real triage of the buildings that we regard as our highest risk and then concentrate our effort there, because otherwise we will end up not addressing all of the built environment in the way that's required. So we will need to be innovative in how we tackle that. It's going to be a relentless focus of the organisation. As I say, we will continue to lobby central government and local government for continued support to enable us to do that. But this will be a theme that we will have to keep coming back to time and time again.
Thank you, and I'm sure you've engaged with them already, but the Endar Cladding Scandal Group, who just have some awful stories sometimes of being trapped in homes and just not being able to sell or able to move. What work or engagement will you do with groups like Endar Cladding Scandal? Well,
we're completely open and listen to the challenges that many groups face in this space. You know, we're working very hard with the Mayor's team and the GLA more broadly around remediation and making sure that buildings are as safe as they possibly can be, and we know our role in that process. We can't regulate our way out of this problem. There is a culture change within the building industry and construction more broadly that we need to make very clear about what our expectations are. We know we're going to have to work across the London plan to make sure that the housing targets that are in place have fire safety at their core, and we will continue to push and drive that, and I've got absolutely no doubt the Mayor and his team will be supportive of that, because we want to see houses built. We understand the housing crisis that exists, but what we will also do is make sure that they're built in a safe way that we can have real assurance around the building stock that exists within London. But this is an ongoing issue that we've got to try and reconcile. I know we're going to have to put additional resource into those teams, but this is so critical for the safety of London and Londoners that we need to make sure we continue to push that forward.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our questions now. Assembly Member Bakhari.
Thank you. So my question is on the report itself. That we recommended that you publish a new strategy for attracting and retaining more diverse candidates. And if you were to be a commissioner, would you be focusing on that, and how will you be focusing on that? The data's pretty poor. It shows that in 2023 there was a drop of 45% of female recruits, 30% drop in Black and Asian and underrepresented groups. How are you going to deal with that if you were given the role as Commissioner?
Well, we understand that the makeup of the London Fire Brigade is critical in terms of how we're going to move the organisation forward, and we want an organisation that better reflects the city that we serve. So absolutely clear commitment on that. There are some challenges, structural challenges, in terms of the lack of movement within positions. You know, we know that firefighters, very much like myself, actually join at a young age and then remain in the service for 30 or 40 years. So there's not the turnover of staff to make some of the key demographic changes that we know that we need to make. So we will be relentless in our recruitment to make sure where we do have the opportunity to address gender balance, to make sure that we are much more ethnically diverse than we currently are. That's where we put our shoulder to the wheel. But there are some structural impediments that mean that this takes time. You know, changing the demography of the London Fire Brigade will take time. But my commitment is that it's absolutely something we need to do. As I was saying right at the beginning, diversity of thought and view, having a diverse workforce makes us a better organisation. It means we make better decisions. It means we are better firefighters. We're better control officers. That commitment is there. But there are some structural challenges in terms of the makeup of the organisation, which means this is going to take some time. So we will concentrate on our outreach effort. We will make it very, very clear to London and Londoners that the London Fire Brigade is a career for you if you have the skills and attributes to be a firefighter or a control officer or work in one of our professional teams. This is an organisation for you. We're on what I hope is an exciting journey moving forward, and it needs to be an organisation for everyone. So there will be that relentless commitment.
Brilliant. I mean, like I said,
there are some challenges with the way that we're structured.
When I first met you, exactly when I challenged you to introduce me to the first Hijabi firefighter, and we did, and you did that. So I expect good results if you get this role. There was an interesting post from the Fire Brigade Union that stated that in the light of the Supreme Court ruling on the interim guidance of EHRC, that there was little clarity for those using single-sex spaces in the fire stations and control room, calling for guidance on unworkable, unhelpful and likely to increase discrimination. Now, if you were to get the role of the Commissioner, how will you handle this issue to make sure that you're committed to making sure that even trans people feel included and be part of your diverse London Fire Brigade?
Well, part of our 10 million commitment around privacy for all has been about this, that it's privacy for all, that we have gender-neutral facilities, that everybody who comes to work in the London Fire Brigade feels safe and secure in their workplace. That's an ongoing commitment. And we will make sure we will obviously honour the guidance that's come out or will be coming out from the HRC or anybody else for that matter. We obviously understand the ruling that's come from the judges most recently, and we'll of course honour that, but we've also got a responsibility to everybody who works in the London Fire Brigade that they feel safe and secure, and that will continue. And I think our Privacy for All programme is evidence of that commitment, that we are genuinely creating gender-neutral spaces where that's appropriate, but also single-sex spaces as well, which is the right and proper thing to do.
Okay, my last question. We have some people in our political spectrum now that are calling for cuts on EDI. What's your position on that if you were the Commissioner? Would you be making cuts on this particular issue when it comes to equality, diversity and inclusion?
Well, we're committed to the ongoing continued cultural improvement of the organisation, you know, whether it's DEI or EDI or whatever the label that gets put on it. The key thing for me is that we have a genuinely meritocratic organisation, but of course we do know that not everybody starts from the same position. And we need to have equity across the organisations, that the very, very best talent comes to the fore. And so that commitment is absolutely there. One of the most seminal moments for me, actually, is I went to a Stonewall conference many, many years ago, and the Director General of GCHQ was there to receive an award, actually, for the most inclusive workplace in the United Kingdom at the time. And his response actually really did rest with me, because what he said was that actually to be the very best in terms of keeping the country secure, and interestingly, MI5 were, I think, third and MI6 were fourth, something like that. And what he said was, well, I need the best brains in the country to help keep the country safe. And the way you do that is to have a proper, inclusive organisation. That is my commitment. I know that that's what we need to do to have the genuinely world-class 21st century fire and rescue service that London and Londoners deserve. And I'll be unwavering in that commitment.
That's a really solid answer, thank you. I just have one last question, though, that's sparked off. So a few years ago, there was I would call it a scandal, but you could use what word you want, around the Freemasons donating to the London Fire Brigade. And when I asked the Commissioner about this, I think he pretty much said it wasn't right, but I asked him for a commitment that that wouldn't happen again in future, and he said he wasn't going to, when there was a budget fall, condemn any taking of money from organisations. I'm just, again, wondering, when we're considering your appointment or your proposed appointment, how you feel about this money from the Freemasons.
Well, I'll be looking at any improvements that we need to make in terms of our kit, equipment and training will be within our current budget envelope. And I think if we can think innovatively in terms of how we use that budget, my desire would be that that is all driven through our own internal funding, whether that's coming from national government or from the GLA, and that would be the focus. You know, I am going to be very, very clear with central government and local government that we will need additional funding to continue to drive the improvement of the London Fire Brigade. That will be the focus. What I would say is that the Mayor and his team have helped us on the journey that we've been on over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, with significant commitments around investment, especially around training. I will continue to make that case for the London Fire Brigade, and that will be my focus rather than looking at anything else. I think we should be funding ourselves within the current budget envelope and asking central and local government for further support if it's required.
I'll leave that there for now. Thank you very much. Jonathan Smith, thanks for attending today's meeting. You may now leave the meeting, although you are free to observe the rest of the discussion from the public gallery if you wish, or watch on broadcast if you want to watch us chatting about you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Picking that back up then, are there any comments from the committee?
Yep.
Assemblymember Hall.
I meant what I said. I've watched him over all the... As you know, I've been on the Fire Brigade for years. He is rock solid. He's been in charge of all the different departments. He has always answered my questions, always, in an absolute, honest, open way. And it's absolutely true. I heard Andy was leaving at the beginning, or just before MQT started, and I went over to the mayor and said, I do hope Jonathan Smith takes over, because to me, it's such a big fire brigade that there's nobody else in the country that is used to dealing with the size of and complexities of it. And he's been a very good deputy to Andy, and is the ideal person to take over.
Thank you. Assembly Member Desai.
Can I say I endorse everything that Assembly Member Hall has said. I think you gave a very sort of comprehensive set of answers. And I was very impressed.
Thank you. Taking my chair hat off. I'm sorry, go on, Assembly Member Bakar.
So I'd like to make the comment that this is an incredibly difficult job with incredibly difficult challenges up ahead. And I think we do need to make that very clear within our position here. Now, I'm not objecting at all to the position. I'm not saying anything other than the fact that I think if we proceed with this, there needs to be some very clear guidance from us about the seriousness of the need for change. He did commit to a change in leadership. I expect to see that change. I also expect to see some serious commitments to the culture of the Fire Brigade that has been committed to, but also not just words, action. And I think that needs to be committed to. We still haven't had any written confirmation yet from our report that we've done, so I want to see that as well as part of a commitment. So I would be willing to accept the acceptance of this role as the London Fire Commissioner, but with those caveats of making sure that we are very clear of the challenges ahead.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hall and then Assembly Member Desai.
With the greatest respect, and I do mean that genuinely, he knows better than any of us how bloody difficult this job is.
Yeah.
He's living it. No, and I don't think we should insult him by putting something like that on a sheet. This man has come right the way through the ranks.
25 years.
He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows far more what he's doing than we know. Yeah. He did commit to what you were asking. He absolutely committed. And he's genuine. And he has been completely committed to the cultural review all the way through, as Andy has. And I think it would be really insulting to put that down. We can question him in committee going forward, but nobody knows how hard this job is more than he does. Yeah. I can absolutely assure you. And I think it would be really rude, quite frankly, and insulting to put that on a piece of paper.
I think we're just clarifying.
Sorry, hold on. Let's go to something on the side and I'll come back to you.
Let me get straight to the point. There's no middle ground here. Either we appoint Mr. Smith, agree to recommend his appointment mayor, or if there are comments, but those comments have to be around his answers, not about what we think, I agree with everything that Senator Hall has said, and I propose that we move to recommend his appointment to the mayor now.
Okay, Assembly Member Bakari.
There is no denying that this role is very well suited to this candidate, and I agree with that. And I said even here in the chamber that I was expecting this to happen anyway. That's not my argument here. I just think it's incredibly important that we are putting down that it is, there have been some problems with the culture of the London Fire Brigade, and they haven't gone away. And he has got a massive task ahead of him. And if we don't clarify that, even if it's just one line to say, we are really supportive of this, but there is some real challenges ahead, and that we will have to make that point. And that's all I'm saying. And I don't think that's I think that's actually us doing our job, which is a very serious job, and there is nowhere else that we can clarify that other than putting it in words, and that's what I would say. Now, if that's a minority view, I'm absolutely fine with that.
Just before Assembly Member Tyrrell, because this might help this, is I'm sympathetic to your view. I don't know if I entirely agree, but also, depending on what Assembly Member Tyrrell says, I can see we would be outvoted anyway, so that might make this conversation shorter. But Assembly Member Tyrrell.
Yep, I keep it short. I wanted to second Assembly Member Desai in that we go for the first option of approving The reason I disagree with Assemblymember Bakari's comments is because I think that Jonathan Smith addressed that in his answers, that he agreed that there were challenges going forward, that he acknowledged that it's not job done and so forth, and therefore I don't see the need to put it in writing to him because he's already aware of the challenge and agrees with the point of view.
Thank you. I think I can conclude us by saying I do agree with that, although, as I say, I have...
Solution?
Yes, please, Assemblymember.
I have a solution. Why don't we agree with the appointment, we all agree with that, and say that we wish him well because we are more than aware that it's an extremely difficult job that covers, and that we are delighted to hear that he's fully committed to the cultural improvements on the cultural change. There. So does that fits in with you?
That's actually very similar to what I was thinking of doing. There we go.
We're all in agreement.
Assemblymember Hall bringing us all together.
Sort of, but anyway. 4-1, so I think
I just think it's important that we really do point out the fact this is a really difficult job.
I'm just going to bring us to order for a moment. Assemblymember Bakari, and then if someone else wants to speak, and then I'm going to
just wanted to clarify. I mean, I'm pleased that we've got a solution and a way forward, because if we don't acknowledge the fact that that we have a really important job ourselves here, and we cannot ignore that. And there are firefighters who are reaching out to us, on, for me anyway, a daily basis of the situation they're in within the culture, facing misogyny, homophobia and racism. And I have a duty to make sure that those voices are heard within this committee, but also within this appointment. So therefore, I think it's important that we do say this is a difficult job, and you need to make sure that we will be scrutinising that, but in a way that is still accepting the fact that he is fit for the job.
Thank you. So to confirm where I think we're at, we're going to do two things. One is to agree to recommend the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Jonathan Smith to the Office of London Fire Commissioner, and within that letter also wish him well with the challenges, the large challenges facing him with, what word you use, Susan?
With clearly a very difficult position and or task, and clearly with a, what did I put? We clarified the position, and we wish him well with the difficult... I forgot what I said. You see, I forget what I did 5 minutes ago.
Would you like me to read that?
Yes,
please, because that's what I said.
So, along with the letter to the Mayor, that would be recommending that the committee proceeds with the appointment of Jonathan Smith. At the end, it would just be commenting that the committee supports Jonathan in the difficult job with the difficult challenges ahead, and are delighted to hear that he welcomes the cultural report and recommendations and challenges within it.
Culture reform within that.
Cultural reform, and there we go. We're all happy.
Everyone happy?
Yeah.
Not really, but...
Okay, is there enough people happy to pass it?
It's compromise.
Yes, excellent.
Party, remember?
Thank you. So that letter will be sent to the Mayor following this meeting to confirm the committee's recommendation, just to see if anyone else wants to say anything. No. Thank you. That concludes today's meeting.